Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I'm gonna show you how I built this front-end travel React.js application styled with Tailwind CSS. So if you watch my channel, you think this might be looking a little bit familiar. Yes, I built it something very similar using just custom CSS. In this video, I'm gonna style the entire project with Tailwind CSS. I'm gonna show you how to install Tailwind and configure it in your own React application. So this is what we're gonna be building here. We have a full screen, full width video background with a nice little form embedded on the top. We're using an overlay. We're using React icons. You see these icons up here in our custom Navbar. Let's scroll down. Everything is going to be 100% mobile responsive. Here we're using the grid properties and Tailwind. Then down here, some more, you see our React icons and beautiful gradient buttons here, the gradient colors we're using, and a form here on the right. Boom, nice selector drop down, some date selectors, boom. Then down here, we are reusing a functional component here, passing through some properties such as some background images here, as well as some text that you see on the bottom left here. And then down here, this is a custom built slider carousel that I'm going to be showing you how to build in custom JavaScript and be able to reuse this in React with a useState hook. Let's have a look here. Boom. As you can see, nice little slide here. And then of course, a nice footer at the bottom here. So if you want to see how I build this using React and Tailwind CSS, then let's get started. All right, you guys, here we are in VS Code. I'm gonna go ahead and press the Control Backtick button to open up my terminal here. And let's go ahead and create our React application. I'm gonna be using Yarn. If you're using NPM, that's fine too. Create React app, and I'm gonna call this Travel React Tailwind. Now go ahead and press enter. This will only take a moment, you guys. All right, it says happy hacking. That means we are ready to get started. I'm gonna go ahead and pull over the directory we just created. This is just the create React app. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and press this Control Backtick button to get that back open. And let's start up our development server with yarn start, npm start if you're using npm. Alrighty, here we are. And this is, it's taking just a moment since I'm recording, but this is just the boilerplate code, the plain create React application that you should be seeing right here. So, first thing I want to do is clean up a few files here just to declutter that we're not going to be using for this tutorial. So the app.css, the app.test, the logo, this report web vitals and setup test. Let's go ahead and remove all of those. We're going to get some errors to write. So to clear up these errors, let's go to index.js and we'll get rid of that there in this report web vitals. Then our app.js, we're actually not going to use any of this. And again, no class names here like this because we're going to be using Tailwind. And at the top here, I don't even think we really need to do this, but we're just going to import React from React. Now, let's go ahead and, what's it looking for? Oh, there we go. Now, first thing we need to do is install Tailwind. So let's go over to Tailwind here. There we are. And I'm going to click on Get Started here. Now, we're using a framework. We're using React here. So I'm going to go and click on the framework guides. And let's scroll down to create React app. Here we are. Now, first thing it wants us to do is create a React application. We've already done that. So let's move on to the next step. Let's go ahead and install the Tailwind dependency. So if you're using npm, just copy that completely. Like I said, I'm using Yarn, so I'm going to do it like this. So I'm going to type yarn add, and I'm going to leave out that development dependency there. Go ahead and press enter. And the next thing we want to do is run the npx Tailwind CSS init, and npx is different than npm, so just something to note there for you guys. Init-p, and what this is going to do is create our tailwind.config file over here on the left. Now our next step, it wants us to add some information into this content array, so I'm just going to copy this over right here and just paste that right into the content array. And lastly, it wants us to copy this into our index.css file. That is why we left that here. So I'm gonna go ahead and select all of that and boom, there we go. Now, I highly recommend if you're gonna be working with Tailwind that you use this, this plugin over here on the left here. It is, where are we at here? So of course the React Redux ES7 snippets, but we also want to be using, well, where's it in here? We'll look for Tailwind IntelliSense, I believe it's what it's called. This is it right here. What it's going to do is actually give you a little bit more information about the styles. That way you don't have to look up everything, and it's going to save you a bunch of time. Trust me, you guys, you have to use it if you're going to be using Tailwind, especially if you're new to Tailwind. So here we are. We'll go ahead and close this tailwind.config file, and let's have a look at our React application. Now, if we enter in an H1 right here, it is likely not going to, Tailwind's not going to be configured yet. There we go. So with Tailwind styles, default styles, it's not going to have any bold text, no enlarged text for heading tags. But what we need to do is actually just close down this server. So what we can do is just stop this server and we'll just restart it. And now, as you can see, let's go ahead and get this thing started up here. Our text, our H1 tag, should shrink down to just a normal p-size tag here. So there it goes. So now we know Tailwind is now working correctly. So the first thing I want to do in our application here, so let's throw together this, let's do our Navbar first here. So what I want to do here, and I'm going to create a couple folders before we create our Navbar here. So the way we're going to lay out our project, we're going to have an assets folder. By the way, we're just going to be working in the source directory here. So don't worry about the public or node modules or anything else here. So I created an assets folder, and that's where all of our images and our videos are going to stay. And then we're going to have a components folder. This is where all of our individual components are going to live. Now, this is going to be just a single page application. So it's going to be very easy to navigate around this file structure here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull over. I have all the images and videos I'm going to be using in this project. Now, if you want to use your own, just go to Pexels or unsplash.com and grab whatever images you like. If you want to use the ones I'm using, I'm going to put a link. I'm going to clone this and, I'm going to upload this to GitHub, and I'll put a link in the description below so you can clone it and use my images and videos. So definitely feel free to do that. So now I have all my images and the videos in here in the assets. And in our components folder, let's go ahead and create a file. And this will be our navbar. So navbar.js or navbar.jsx is what I'm going to be using here. I'm going to be using the RAFCE. It's going to generate my functional component here. So in this video, I'm going to be using functional components. You can use whatever you like. Just note the useState hook will only be available in the functional components. So just keep that in mind. Now for our navbar, let's have a look here. So for our navbar, what we want to have here, I'm going to have a max. Now I'm going to have it take up the full width of the screen. And what we're going to have at full screen are three little sections here. A logo here on the left, and then a little UL here in the middle, and then some icons here on the right. We'll just wrap those in some divs. So let's do that first. I'm going to go over here, and just to kind of throw in some Tailwind here, what we want this to be is we'll have it flex, then justify, and this is the Tailwind CSS IntelliSense that you see popping up right here. So this is how powerful it is, guys. You save so much time. You don't have to go to Tailwind and look up what the styles mean. We can just go to justify between. Now, most of these names in Tailwind, the class names in Tailwind are self-explanatory. So obviously flex is going to be display flex. You can use block, absolute, fixed for the positioning. So this is what we want right here. Now I do want to do, we'll say items, center, and then we have to have a height for that. So I'm going to say H20, and there you can see that means H20 will mean 80 pixels for our height here. So let's go ahead and get going so we can actually see what we're throwing in here. So like I said, we want to have a div here at the beginning, and I'm going to use an H1 for my logo, and I'm just going to call this beaches, and you're going to see this appear here on the right of the screen. Oh, of course, we need to import our navbar. Boom, we'll go ahead and auto import it here at the top. So now, boom, now we can see what we're working with here. And so after this div, we want to have a UL. And what we're going to be using, we'll see. This is what we're going to be building for our drop down to you guys. Home, destinations, travel, views, and book. So we'll say, we'll have a LI in here. Home, let's travel, knock these down a few times. We'll say destinations, travel, view, and these are just going to be our list items here. I'm not even putting them in A tags because we're not going to have clickable links. But that is what we're doing right there. And then have a div for the far side of our screen, and it's going to be these icons right there. So what we need to do is install React icons so we can have access to these icons. I'm going to go ahead and open up a new terminal here, and I'm going to be using yarn add and then React-icons. This will install fairly quickly here. Now for our icons, before we can use them, we need to import them at the top. So I'm going to import BS person is just the name of the icon I'm going to be using from React-icons. Now, this is not going to work. We can't import these yet because we need to add that pretext here, this BS. We need to add that afterwards. And now we will have access to that icon. If you can see, so we put it in here. To use our icons, we're going to open up a tag here. And this is one is called BS person. And to go back over here, we should now be able to see it. There we go. So I'm going to close this down so we can see. We're also using the search, and the search is actually BI search. So I believe is what it's called. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this down and just change this in here, BI search. Then we need to change this to the BI, because like I said, that pretext has to be the same here. So let's see here. Maybe I called it the wrong thing here. What's it called? BI. No, BI search is right. Perfect. Okay. And I'm just going to add this right here like so. And now we're going to have access to this there. So that is looking good so far. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of padding here so we can have some padding on mobile devices and on all devices really. So I'm going to add right here, I'm going to say px4, and what that's going to be is padding of 1 rem, right? Because 4 is 1 rem, as we can see here, on the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis there. So what we're going to want to do is this unordered list, I'm going to display this as flex, because of course we want that to lay down. And also these items here, let's give that a class name of flex so they lay down as well. Now, before we go in here and start individually styling each thing, so like, for example, some of these list items, we could go to each list item and just declare a class name. However, that could get very, very messy. What we can do in Tailwind is actually apply some global styling. So I'm going to do that right now. Let's cruise over to our index.css here. Now, for our index.css, to apply global styling, what we're going to say is give the @ sign, then layer base, okay? Then open up some curly brackets. And now we can target our class name, our custom class name, or an element, HTML element, to give it some styling here. So I'm just going to grab the li for the list item here, since we did not give it a class name. And what we can say, if I want to give this a padding on the x-axis, or yeah, we'll just give it a padding on the x-axis for 1 rem. So we'll just say apply, and then I can just say px-4, or I'll just say p4. And what's p4 instead of px4 is just padding on all sides. So now you can see we have some nice padding around our list items here. And that is what we want. Perfect. So what I also want to do is I'm going to be using a Google font here. So I'm just going to go and import that, and basically go to fonts.google.com if you want to use some custom fonts, or you can use this one as well. And what I can do to actually apply this font, I can go in here and just say or I'll just say body, and then we can apply font. And then in CSS, we can actually, Tailwind, we can use the brackets to add in some custom values here. And I'm just going to say Poppins, because that's what we're going to be using. And we should now see our font change to the Poppins font there. Okay, so, and real quick, while we're in here, I'm going to go ahead and add just a custom sizing for some H tags here. That way we don't have to come back and or style each individual H tag. So what I'm going to say for H1, I think I'm going to use text 3XL. And then Tailwind is it's a mobile first approach, so it uses minimum width. So what we can say, text 3XL, and what that's going to do if we hover over it, you can see it adds 30 pixels as the font size. And really cool about Tailwind, it also adds the line height, as you can see here. So, but I want this to basically display on all screens. Then anything above a medium breakpoint, I want the text size to raise a little bit higher. So what we can do there is just add MD for medium, then I'll say text 4XL. So now we can see and I'm going to also add a font bold to give that a little thicker weight there. Now, as you can see, we are at we are underneath, I think that MD, the medium breakpoint for Tailwind, I believe is 768 pixels. It goes from small, medium, large, extra large here. So as you can see, as we get a little bit bigger, boom, you can see a small change in our H1 there. So that is the breakpoint right there. So very, very important to learn that there. Now, I'm going to add in the H2, and what we'll say for the H2, what am I going to set this as? Text, we'll say text 3XL, then of course, font bold. And while we're at it here, I'm going to go ahead and add the H3 as well. Boom, apply. And just so you know, just to be clear here, you guys, you don't have to go down and hit apply on each line. In fact, you will get a syntax error. So we don't have to separate them by commas. They just all go on the same line like so. So for our H3, we're going to be doing just text XL, and we'll do font bold. There we go, like so. So let's get out of here for now and come back to our navbar to finish up some styling. So in here, we have this displayed as flex. Now for our unordered list here at the top, our main nav menu, we actually don't want this to display on mobile devices, of course. So what we can say here, anything, we'll say hidden on all screen sizes, right? And then anything over the medium breakpoint, we want this to display as flex. So now you see that disappears. And we actually want to say the same thing for our icon container right here. So I'm just going to copy that down as well. So now we don't see anything at all, but what we do want to add, however, is our little hamburger menu here. Boom, there we go. And then this mobile menu is going to be a separate div altogether. So let's go down here, and what we'll add is another div here. And what this is our hamburger menu. And real quick, I'm going to import the icons we're going to be using. And the icons we are going to be using here is AI outline close, right? And this is going to be X from React icons AI. And then the other one, import, going to be HI outline menu alt for from React icons slash, you know what it is, HI, boom, there we go. So let's have a look at what we're doing here. And what I want to throw in here, just for now, I'm going to use that hamburger menu, which is HI, boom, just like so. Now we should be able to see it. There it is. Now we can actually access the properties here of the React icons. What we can say, I'm actually going to hold the Alt button down here so I can type on all of these at the same time here. And we can just say size 20 here. And as you can see, the icon's going to get a little bit bigger. And that's going to do it for the same as the other ones as well. Boom. Now, of course, when we're at our large screen, we don't want our mobile menu to be displayed. So what I'm going to say down here is give the class name, and then we'll say medium, we want it to display as block, and then everything else we want to be hidden here. So, oh, sorry, other way around here. Anything above medium, we want it to be hidden. And we actually just get rid of this here. So, let's have a look. Now, if we cannot see anything, then right as we hit that breakpoint, you can see our H1 changes, and now we have our mobile menu. That's great. That's what we want. Now, let's style our dropdown here. Boom, there we go. So for our dropdown, I'm just going to create another div here. And let's throw this at, we'll see, we'll do an unordered list. And I'm actually just going to copy this right here. Boom, there we go. And then here at the top, I'll add in our H1 here, just like we have up there. Beaches, boom, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and save that. So Prettier will do a nice job formatting that for me. Now, I want to add some buttons here. I'm going to add 2 buttons. So I'm going to just throw this inside a div, inside the unordered list, but just below the list items here. So buttons here, and one's going to say search, and then the next one we want to say account. There we go. And then we have these, our React icons down here, some social icons that I'm going to also put within the div just below our buttons here. So what we're going to be using here, that one is FA Facebook. See if I can remember all of these here. FA Twitter. All of these are going to be FA. So FA YouTube. And then we'll have an FA Pinterest. And then, or so that middle one was Instagram. Apologies for that. FI Instagram. You already have that one in there. Boom. There we go. Now, what I'm going to do is actually just give these, I'm going to go ahead and select all of these here, and I'm going to give them a class name of icon just to save on some time here. So I can say icon. Boom. And okay, what we want to do, see if we can see these, we need to import them. So let's go ahead and import these at the top. Import FA Facebook. And I'm going to show you a real cool little trick here real quick. So now that we have one imported, we're still getting some errors. Of course, the other ones, we have not imported them at the top. what I can do is just click right here and press the control spacebar. And sometimes it's not going to work. We'll do it later in the video. Sometimes you can auto import them, but looks like that's not the case right now. That's okay. So we got Twitter, FA Instagram, we have FA Pinterest, and then FA YouTube. There we go. So now we should clear up. Oh, what's going on here? FA imported. Oh, again, there we go. That's what I was talking about earlier, guys. If you just import from React icons, you're going to get an error. So what we need to do is add, anybody know, FA, and that's going to clear up all of the errors for us. So boom, there we go. Now this looks kind of ridiculous right now because we don't want this menu to ever be shown unless we click on the menu button. So what I'm going to say here is we want to display this as absolute. If I can type absolute, and we actually want this to be left. We're going to hide this. Well, for now, I'm going to leave this as left 0 because let's see how this, oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong side here. What I want to see for our nav menu, and here is our nav menu. And in fact, I'm just going to put a little note here. We'll say mobile menu drop down here. And in here, it says MD, wrong spot once again. There we go. This here is going to be hamburger. And then right here, perfect. So in here, what we want to say, we're going to give this a class name of absolute. And for now, let's go ahead and style this thing as we're going to see it on the screen, like so, just like that. So left 0. And then I'm also going to give this, let's see here, we'll say top 0, width full. Width full is going to be 100%. And let's use a BG gray 200, I believe is what I used. I might have to double check over here on the notes. So actually we're going to be using 100, but we're going to give this an alpha effect so we can kind of see through it. And the way we do that is just put a slash and then 90. And the higher it is, the more dense it will be. So as you can see, we can kind of see through here like so, and that's perfect. That is what we want right there. So we're also going to want to give this some padding. I'm going to say PX4, which is 1 rem, and then PY7 is going to give us just a little bit of padding there. So boom, that's what we want. And I'm going to go ahead and flex, and then flex column so everything is stacked on top. And that is going to be looking good for us right now. That's what we want right there. Boom. So let's have a look at these buttons here. And for our buttons, what we can do, we actually go ahead and style our buttons. And since we're going to be reusing the button component or the button styles, I'm going to go ahead and go into our index.css and give our buttons some styling here. And also we're going to be using CSS variables, and how we do that, the colon here, then I'm going to access the root, and then I'm going to add in my variable names, primary, dark. And this first primary color we're going to be using is, let's see, 5651E5. There we go. And the second one I'm going to call primary light. And this one is going to be, let's see here, 709DFF. Let's have a look at that there. All right, so in here, let's go down and let's target all of our buttons here. So I'm just gonna say button, and then for our button, what we're gonna say is the apply here. Now we have a whole bunch of styles that we're gonna apply to our buttons. So as you can see, our buttons right now, we got this thing over there. I'll just say P3. So just giving a padding of 3, which is 0.75 rem all the way around. But as you can see, our buttons here, they don't come, in Tailwind, they come default with 0 styling whatsoever. So we actually have to declare everything. So if we say border, you're now going to see a little bit of a border around them, like so. That's what we want right there. Now we're going to be doing a gradient. So BG gradient, and this is how we do gradients in Tailwind. So you can already see it's giving us some suggestions. And I'm going to use the BG gradient to R, right? So to the right. So what we can say is from, and then open up our brackets here. And this is our color here that we can specify. So from, and I'm going to use the variable that we created. So the way we do that, we create, we say var, open up our parentheses there. And I'm just going to say primary dark. So now we should start to see our colors there. And then we can say from, and then the next one is going to be to, then the same thing here, var, and we're going to be using the primary light, like so. So now we can see that is what we want right there. We still need some more styling though. I'm going to use text white, and then we'll have a rounded corners here. Now, as you can see, they get a little rounded, and we can go up to from SM for small, medium, large, 2XL, 3XL. And for this video, I'm going to be using rounded MD. And as you can see, that raises our border radius. So that is what we want right there. Everything's looking nice. And then, like I said, for these icons, we gave this a class name. So what we can do here is just target icon. And I'm going to give this a little bit bigger size. And text 2XL, and then cursor pointer on all of our icons here. So that's going to raise up the sizing a little bit. And up here, I'm just going to target that again, and we'll say color, our variable, primary darks. There you go. And I've been using Tailwind, you guys, for a little less than a month now, and I've really fallen in love with it. It's really, really great. I'm loving using this. It's so functional, and you save so much time developing. So we're getting there. It's starting to look a little better. There we go. Now for our list items, might want to even add these a little bit, add a little bit bigger text here. So what we can do in here is we'll say, so we can see what we're doing here, text XL, so we can bump this size up a little bit. If I can spell things correctly, there we go. Boom, that's what we want right there, you guys. Snagging some coffee. Now for our buttons, let's do this for our buttons. Let's flex and then flex columns so they can just stack nicely on top of each other. Probably going to need to give, let's give this a little bit of a margin here. We can just do this on one of them. We'll say MY for margin on the Y-axis, which is top and bottom there. We'll say MY4, which is 1 rem. I think that looks okay. Maybe a little bit more. We'll say MY6 there. Perfect. Now for our icons, we'll say flex. And let's do justify between so they spread out all across our the page there. But let's give them some MY of 8, which is 2 rem. Let's see how that looks. Maybe 6. I think that's looking pretty decent right there, you guys. Boom, boom, boom. That looks pretty close. That looks pretty good. Now let's give a little underline here, a border bottom. So I'm going to go in here into our, I'm going to stay in our navbar in here. I'm not going to apply this to our global styling because I only want to show this line here, the border on the bottom on our mobile menu. So I'm going to go ahead and save it, formats everything very nicely for us. So in our mobile, this is our mobile menu here that we're targeting. I'm just going to hold down the Alt button and click on multiple lines. That way I can type in multiple places at the same time and just save a little bit of time here. So what we can say is border B, and let's see if we can, like to see what we're doing. Now we can see what we're doing here a little bit. And we can even, I think that looks okay for now. So a few things we need to do. What we want to do is actually hide this because right now it's displaying at all times and that's not going to work. So right here, we left this at a left 0. And what I actually want to do is put some brackets around here. I'm actually going to leave this at left 100%. And what that's going to do is just slide it off of the screen. And that's what we want right there. Now, what we want to happen is when we click this mobile hamburger button, we want our menu to slide in. So we're going to do that with state. So let's go ahead and import the useState hook. There we go. And our state, we're going to put right here inside of our navbar. So what we're going to say is just const and then open up a bracket. We're going to have 2 values here. I'm going to call this nav and set nav. And this is going to be equal to useState. And we're going to give this a needs a value, and we're going to use a Boolean value of false here. There we go. Now we're also going to need a function. I'm going to make this an arrow function here called handle nav. Yep, sorry, no values passed in here. And then what we want to do is just set nav to opposite of its current value there. Perfect. So that's what we want right there. Next, we want to go down and grab our hamburger menu here. So right here, what I'm going to do is just open up here and I'm going to enter in a ternary operator here. Okay. And what we want to say here basically is nav is true, which the default setting is false. So if the nav is true, what we want to display is actually what I just copied, this outline close. And I'm going to go ahead and give that the size property of 20 as well. So what we're saying, if nav is true, we want to display the close icon else we want to display this one right here, and I'm just going to cut it out and paste it in here like so. Now, if we save that, once we, we need to add an onClick here. So for this div here, let's add onClick. What we want to do is call that function that we just created, that arrow function we just created, and we called that handle nav. So every time we click this div, it's going to run this function handle nav, and it's going to change our state to the opposite of its current value. So now, as you can see, whenever we click this, our button changes back and forth. And essentially, we want to do that exact same thing for our mobile menu. So what I'm going to do is actually just copy this styling right here, okay? And so now that you have it copied, let's get rid of this. And we don't need the quotes there. We need some curly brackets. And we want to say the same thing if nav is true, and again, the default value is false. If nav is true, we want to display this styling here, and I'm going to paste the styling back in there. Only in this case, I want to drop this, change this back down to left 0. Okay, so if nav is true, display these styling, else let's display this as absolute and a left of the negative 100% there, and that's going to hide it off the screen whenever it is false. So now if we click this, of course, we're going to need our onClick function. So onClick, and again, this is going to be the same handle nav function. So let's have a look, and boom, there it is. That's what we want right there. Now we actually want this to be black. So let's change our outline close. We'll just give this class name of text black. Boom. Ah, it's not working. Oh, so the reason this is not working, I suspect, is the Z index. So what we can do, I'm just going to apply to this one here, the parent div here. I'm just going to say Z10, and what that is, if you hover over here, it increases the Z index. So as you can see now, everything is fixed. But I don't like how we can still see, I misspelled beach there. I don't like how we can still see the logo on our navbar in the background there. So let's go ahead and change that. I'm gonna put that in there. So here, I'm gonna add in a little more state so we can just toggle that logo. So in here, I'm gonna do this one more time, const logo and set logo. And I'm just gonna let this default value of the same false here. And again, in this handle nav function, we can do the same thing. We'll just say set logo, the opposite of its current value, like so. And basically this exclamation part is just a logical operator in JavaScript that means or the opposite there. So what we can say in here is basically saying if something is not its current state, then it will change it back. So let's go in here to our H1 here. And what we can say, class name, open up some curly brackets, and we'll do our ternary operator again. And what we can say, if logo is true, give this a class name of hidden, else we'll display it as block. Well, we need to add an onClick as well. So onClick, run our function handle nav. Now let's have a look and see how this looks. Boom, that's what we want. Whoa, what's going on over there? Oh, okay. So let's add this actually. I'm going to cut all of that and put this on the H1 there. Class name, what's going on here? onClick, H1. Let's jack this all up here. There we go. So cutting that there, I'm going to paste it in here. What it was doing was sliding over our whole layout here. So let's have a look again. That is what we want. That is perfect, you guys. I think we're about done with our navbar. Let's scroll this thing open just so we can make sure everything is looking good right there. Let's give a little bit of padding right here, or margin on that icon here. So what I'm going to say is class name mr2 for margin right is going to be 0.5 rem. So I think that looks a little bit better there. Perfect, perfect. Now for this sizing, let's go. I don't want our links this big. And I know we increase the size, but what we can say is anything over, we'll say, let's just take this away for now. I'm going to keep that. I think it looks a little bit better, a smaller sizing here. So boom there. So here we are, everything above 768 pixels. Then once we hit our breakpoint, boom, changes down, and now we have access to our navbar. So that is our navbar. Here we go. Let's move on to the next section here. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And let's move on to our video background right here. So I'm going to close these out, and I'll see you on this next one. Okay, so to create a full screen, full width video background here using Tailwind, let's go ahead and create our component here. So we're going to components here, and then we want to create our hero.jsx. There we go. Now RAFCE is going to get our functional component here. And let's go ahead and add this to our app here. And I'm going to press the Control Space button. There we go. We can auto import it. Now in our hero.jsx, what I want to do first is actually import our video. So now we have access to our video. So let's do that. And I'm going to call this beach vid. I think that's the name of the file as well. So we actually have to find the file. So we need to go outside of our component folder and into our assets. And then I believe it's called beachvid.mp4 if you're using the same file as I am. So now we have imported it. We now have access to it. Let's give this a class right here. So we actually want to display the full width and height of the screen. So I'm going to say w-full for a width of 100%, h screen, and h screen is the height of 100 viewport heights. And I want this to be relative so we can position some a div here, right here in the middle. So let's go ahead and add our video element here. And this can just be a self-closing tag. We don't really need that there. And instead of the quotes there, we're actually going to use our curly brackets, same as we would do a image in React. And we just call our video there that we named it up top, beach vid. So that's not how we want it to be displayed. So let's give this some class name here. And I want it to be width full, h full, there we go. And right now is object cover. Well, object contain. We want it to be object cover, so it takes up the full width and height of this, of the parent div there. So I'm just going to say object cover. There we go. And that's what we want. Now our video is not playing, and that's because we need to add some properties in here. Easy as that. So I'm going to add in autoplay. Now this does have to be camel case. Keep that in mind since we are in React. And then loop. And there's no audio in this, but I'm going to go ahead and say muted as well. Go ahead and save that so Prettier formats it nice and neat for us. Now if we refresh, you can now see our video is working properly. And it covers the full width and height of our browser, no matter what size we are at full screen or if we drop it down to mobile sizes. Now, if we look at our nav bar here, we don't want it to have a white background. We want to change this to transparent. We're going to position it absolutely. And our text here, let's change it over to white. So let's just hop back into our navbar.jsx. We didn't do this at the beginning of the video because you wouldn't be able to see what we are typing. So we'll say absolute. And that's actually going to hide it behind our video there. So we can change the Z index to 10 and we'll say text white. There we go. And that's what we want right there. Uh-oh, something's going on here. So this is displayed as flex. We don't have a dimension here on the width here. So let's just say width full, and I believe, okay, there we go. So that fixed that. Now, perfect, that's what we want. However, we're going to want to change the text in here. So let's change that. This is our mobile menu. And I'll just add it in right here. It doesn't really matter where we add it. Text black. Let's see. There we go. That is what we want right there, you guys. That's perfect. All right. Boom. That looks nice. Smash the like button if you like the value that you're getting out of this video. Trying to build this subscriber count up here. So please smash the like button if you would. I'd much appreciate it. Now let's throw in a div here in the middle. Okay. So I think we're done with this nav bar. For this here, or let's add our overlay first. So for our overlay, it's just going to be a div here. Nothing's going to be inside here. But what we need to do for our overlay, when we position it is absolute, it's going to take up the full width and height of its parent div. And we need to specify top 0 and left 0. Now, what we want our overlay to be, we'll say BG, I'm going to say gray 900. and that's going to be very, very dark. In fact, you can't even see through this. So what we can use is the alpha property, and Tailwind, we're just going to put the slash there, and we can say 10. Now, you're not going to be able to see anything. I don't know if you could even notice how light that was. If we go up to 90, the higher you go, the darker it's going to get. I'm going to leave it. I think I had it set at 30. Yes, I had it set at 30. So this should look the exact same. So I'm going to leave it just like so. Now let's create this div here in the middle. And this is going to be outside of the overlay. So keep that in mind. That div stays on its own there. Now for this div here, we're going to have, let's see here, an H1, and it's going to say first class travel. Let's see if we can even, so you're not going to be able to see what we're typing right now. That's okay. In our H2, we said top 1% locations worldwide. There we go. Now, outside of this div here, we're going to have our form. Let's go ahead and give this this div here. I'm going to give it a class name, absolute, and then we'll say top 0 width full H full, and we just want to be able to see this flex column. So now we can start to see it. That's what we want. We'll say justify center there, and then we'll have text center. Now, I want you guys to be able to see what we're doing here. Text white, and then we'll say P4 for the P-4 for our padding. Perfect. So now we have everything right in the middle of the screen. That's perfect. That's what we want. So inside of this div, let's add our form, okay? And we don't need an action for our form. And this is going to be just a little bit tricky, not too bad, but what we want to have, this essentially what you see here is our entire form. And then we actually have our input hidden inside of our form, and then our button in here with a React icon inside of our button. So let's do that right now for our form. What I want to give here is, let's do our input first. So we're going to have, I'm going to wrap this in a div as well. So we're going to have an input, and this is going to be a type of text, and I'm going to give it a placeholder that says search destinations. There we go. So that is what it's looking right so far. And then outside of this div, we're going to have another div, and that's going to have our button, and it's going to have our React icon inside. And it's AI outline search is what the button is called. And I'm going to give this size 20, and then we'll give it the class name of icon so we can grab in all the other styles we put in our global styling here. So let's see, we need to import this. Boom, there we got it here at the top. Import AI outline search. Make sure you add the /AI afterwards. So this is what it's looking like right there. That is perfect, you guys. What I want to do is now add some styling here. So let's go into this form, okay? So in our form element here, let's add some class. And we want to say flex, justify between, looking at some notes here, items center, max width of, we'll open up our brackets here and say 700 pixels here for the max width. And then we'll say MX auto, and what that's saying is margin auto on the left and right. A width of full border, then P-1 for our padding. So that's what we want right there, you guys. So now we can see both divs are located within our form. Now, for our form background, we're probably going to add in, let's make it a little like alpha here. I'm going to put this on a separate line so you can see what we're doing here. And so I want to say rounded MD, because I want to have a nice little rounded effect. There we go. Oops. Sorry about that, you guys. Hit a button, got off track here. So rounded MD. Now we're also going to have, I'm going to make the text black, and for the background, BG gray, and we're going to do that same, let's do 100, which is almost a white color, right? And then if we add this 90, we can get a nice little overlay. Now, but here's our search box here. This is the input box. So let's go down to our input div here, because this is looking great so far. Very, very close here. So let's go into our input here. And let's add a class name. The BG, we want it to be transparent. That's looking good right there. Perfect, transparent. And I'm going to say a width of, we'll say 300 pixels. There we go. And then anything above the small breakpoint, which the small breakpoint is 640 pixels. So anything above there, anything above small, which is 640 pixels, I want to actually increase this to 400 pixels. And this is just the input inside of our form. That's all we're looking at right now. And I'm not sure if we have this Poppins font, but I'm going to go, or if it's set to it. But I just want to add that in there if it's not already. Perfect. And then see, we don't want that outline. So what we can say on focus, outline, none, boom. I'm going to go down to another line here. I think that's all our styling. So that's looking good right there. So this icon, I want it to display as white. Now we have it set as, I believe, since the icon, the default value is going to be set to black. So let's see if we can just text white, see if that will work. And not working. What we can do is just add some inline styling. So the way we do that in React here, style, and then we're going to use 2 curly brackets. I'm just going to say color. Then we have to put this here in quotes, and I'll say, let's see if that works. Boom. That's what we want right there, you guys. Now let's give a little bit of padding. Let's give a little bit of padding here and in this top 1%. Now I might even drop that down. Let's see how H3 looks. Okay, I'll keep it at an H2. But let's give it a padding here. PY3, let's have a look. A PY4. So I think that looks pretty good right there, you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below and smash the like button if you like what you're seeing here. Boom. Look at this. A very nice drop down. This is what we built so far. It's looking nice. You should be proud, guys. This is awesome. Learning how to use React has been so much fun. So that concludes the navbar and now our hero. What we're going to do next is down here, we're going to create this destinations component here. And so let's go ahead and do that right now. So I'm going to go back in here and let's just close these down. We don't need those anymore. And let's create our new component. I'm going to call it destinations.jsx. Boom. Now go ahead and hit RAFCE to get our functional component here. And let's not forget to import it. There we go. Auto import. Make sure you got it imported here at the top. All right. So what are we building here? And if we scroll down, you can see our component is imported, so we can see it down there by default. So what we want to do basically is have this wrapped in a container, and I set this container to 1240 pixels. So, and then we're going to have a couple H tags, a P tag here, and then some grid system there. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So first thing let's do is add our container here. So I'm going to give this a max width of, and we're going to open up our curly brackets so we can define the width we want. And I'm going to say 1240 pixels with a margin X of auto. And then we're also going to want to do, let's see, we're probably going to want a padding, we'll say PY of 16. So that's going to be about 4 rem padding on the top and bottom. And you can see here, we're starting to get some padding there. And then I'm going to give it P-4. Or it's a PX-4, so we get 1 rem on the left and right, just so when we shrink down to smaller devices. Now, for what we're going to be using in here, let's have a look. We're going to be using some images. So I'm going to go ahead and import these images that we're going to be using. I'm going to copy them over. So just to save some time here. So these are all the images inside of our assets folder. Like I said, you can use your own if you go to Unsplash or any type of stock imagery website, but feel free to just clone this repository and use the ones that I'm using right now. In fact, that'll probably be the easiest way to do it there. So inside of this div, let's add in right here. So we want the all-inclusive resorts. So let's put this in an H1, and I'll say all-inclusive resorts. Perfect. And then under here, little P tag on the Caribbean's best beaches. Just going to copy that over. And I'm going to throw that in my P tag. Boom. There we go. So that is what we want right there. And guess what? Let's add a text center there. And that's going to text center to everything in that div there. So that's looking good right there. So next what we want to have is another div here. And this div is going to be a grid. And what it's going to do is we're going to have, basically, we'll have 3 columns and we'll just have this span over 2 of them. Okay. So let's scroll back down here. And let's create our div here. So we're going to have a div, and inside this div, we're going to have, let's go ahead and set the class names first. So Sorry, you guys, got an itch down there. What I want to say is we'll say grid, and then grid rows none, okay? And then anything above medium, and like I said, when we're down on mobile devices, these are going to stack, right? So as we hit that medium breakpoint, they will actually just kind of lay down. So what we're saying right here is anything above the medium, we'll say grid columns 5. We'll actually give them 5 columns, and then this main image will span across 3 of them. So grid columns 5. Let's give this a little bit of a padding on the top and bottom, and the grid gap we'll give of 2, and then anything above medium, we'll change the gap there to 1 rem there. So that's what we want right there. Of course, we can't see anything because we don't have any images in here. So let's go ahead and import some of our images here, and need to throw in a little slash in there. Otherwise, React does like you to have an alt tag. So this first one here, I'm just going to take in Bora. There we go. Now I'm going to copy this down a few times. I believe we have 5. So this next one we can say 2, and then we'll have, what's this next one? Maldives, and we'll say Maldives 2. And I don't know, I just named these whatever, you guys. It's not, oh, this one's camel case. I'm not sure exactly where these images are, so don't hold me to that. So let's pop this open, and that's what we want. As you can see, we have 5 here on the grid, and we're gonna add some classes to these images, but like so, you're often gonna run into this in development. These images are all different sizes. So in these images, let's go ahead and add some styling to all these. I'm gonna say a width of full, height full, and then object cover there, and that should make everything the same size. There we go, perfect. That's what we want right there. Now, for our first image here, we actually want this image to span all 3 columns here, and then all rows as well. So let's go into this first one only here, so we can have some room. And after the object fit cover on the first image only, what we want to say is column span 2, okay? And then we're also going to want to say, we'll say anything above medium, column span 3 at the medium breakpoint. So anything above 768 pixels. And then we'll have row, we want the row to span as 2 as well. And let's see how that looks. Perfect. So that's what we just did, you guys. Perfect. Now, if we scroll down, they should take up the full width of the screen. This top one here, at least. Boom. That is what we want. And even if we go down to like an iPhone, for example, that is perfect. That's what we want right there, you guys. I hope you like this. Smash the like button if you like it. Now I'm going to drop this back down. So that is what we want right there, you guys. Very, very easy. And that essentially takes care of that whole destinations component. We could actually give a little bit of spacing here on this p tag. So let's just give this a py4 just to give a little bit of space in between there. So that is what we want right there, you guys. The next section we'll be designing in here is this search section. It's going to be a lot of fun. Be using the grid, some forums, and some icons inside of our buttons. Let's jump on that right now. So I'm going to drop this thing back down here. Drop it back down, and then let's go into, we're done with the destinations, okay? And what we're going to be looking for, I'm actually going to call this search here. So I'm going to create a new file. New file there, and I'm going to call this search.jsx. Now let's go ahead and get our functional component going. There we go. And let's import this as search. There we go. Perfect. Now, what we want to do here is, it's going to be this will probably be one of the more bigger components we're going to be creating here in this video. So let's have a look at what we want to do first of all in our search here. So in our outer div here, basically we want to give it, like we did above, a max width container here. Then we're going to be using the grid as well. And apologies, this one above was actually 5 columns. This one is going to be 3 columns, and this left side is going to span across 2 out of the 3 columns. So let's go ahead and do this right now. So for this div here, class name, and let's do max width of 1240 pixels. We'll do MX auto, so everything here is in the middle. And basically that's what we want to do. Now, as we scroll down, boom, as we scroll down, we want everything to stack like so. So let's go ahead and give this a, we want to display as grid. And by default, when we display this as grid, by default, everything is going to be stacked up as a one column here. But anything over, we'll say medium, or we'll say anything over large, we want to display the 3 columns. So we'll say grid column 3, and then also a gap of 4, and then px4 for padding on the x-axis of 1 rem, then py of 16, okay? So we're not going to be able to see anything there yet, but we will have just created some space with all of our padding. Now, what we're going to want to do is pull in a couple of our React icons. So let's go ahead and just import those so we have access to them. And we're going to import. The first one is going to be called RI customer service to fill. And this is going to be from React icons / you know what that is, RI. Now I'm just going to copy that down, but this one is going to be called MD outline travel explore. And this one, of course, is going to be MD. Now we have access to the icons that we're going to be using here in just a moment. So first thing, we created our container here. Now we want to have 2 divs. This is what we created. We want to have this div on the left, then also a right. So we'll say left, and then this one is going to be right now, okay? So for this left div here, and now we can actually see it here, boom, we have our containers here. Basically, what we want on this left side is, let's do a class name, and then anything above the large breakpoint, which I believe the large breakpoint is 1024 pixels. I'm not for sure. I'd have to cruise over to Tailwind to find that out exactly, but basically you want this to calm span 2, okay? And then flex column, and then justify evenly, and that's going to space everything out in between here. So now, as you can see, this column, and if we use this really cool extension called pesticide, highly recommend you get it. It's really awesome developing. So now you can see that this left column is spanning 2/3 of our grid here, and this one over here is just going to be the remaining 1/3. So now we can go in here and let's add our content in here. So what we want to have is, I'm just going to copy that over. Looks like it can be just like a H1 or an H2, and I'm going to actually put this inside of a I'm going to put this inside of a div here, and it's going to have an H2. Boom, there we go. And I'm just going to copy this over to, you could probably just say lorem 100 or something like that would probably be pretty close. Let's go ahead and save that so it formats all nicely. Boom, so that is looking right. That's exactly what we want right there, you guys. Now, next thing we want to do is create another div right there. We're going to be using grid as well. We're just going to be using 2 columns there. So inside of this div here, right? So or actually outside of this div, but still within, this is our left side here. Still, we want to create another div, and in here, we're going to say class name grid, and then, and again, if we go down to our small devices here, we actually want this to display, boom. So at default, we want this to display as 1 column, then anything over, I think we did medium, or sorry, small, because if we open this up just a little bit, we can see they're now side by side, and that's the small breakpoint right there. So it's going to be grid, then anything is above the small breakpoint, we're going to say grid columns 2, like so, and then we'll just give a gap of 8, which is actually 2 rem, and then py4, so we'll get a little padding on the top and bottom here. So that's what we're putting in right now. So what we're going to be adding in is a div in here. So now we can add in our 2 divs. Whoop, I'm gonna go back here, add in our 2 divs, and inside this div, we open this up, we're gonna have our button with an icon here. So let's go ahead and do our button, and we're already gonna see some things here. Boom, there we go. And our icon in here, the icon we're gonna use on the left side is RI, you can use it on whichever side you want here. Customer service to fill. It looks like I actually spelled that wrong at the top. I left out a T, so that should be what we need right there. And as you can see, we now have our button with our icon in the middle, right? And then, so I'm gonna go ahead and save this so it formats, so we can see what we're doing. And then we're gonna actually want to display this as flex, right? So flex, flex column, and then we're gonna say anything above large, we'll change this to flex row, and then items to the center, and then text center. And now we can go in here and just below our button tag, we're gonna have another div here. And this is where we're gonna add our H3. If we can go over here, this is what we're adding in right now. I'm just gonna copy over leading service, okay? And then in our P tag, I'm just gonna use this on both sides here. So we'll just copy that in, boom. And let's have a look at what it's looking like. So that's actually pretty good. That's pretty close to what we're needing so far. That is looking good. I can actually probably just copy this here. Yep, I'm just gonna copy that down because we want it on both sides, and that will appear right here. That is perfect. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of that pesticide outlining there. So perfect, that's what we want. Instead of the RI, what are we using? The MD outline travel on this next one here. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and change the sizing of these. Remember, we can use the size property of React icons. So I'm just gonna say size, and I'm gonna go up to 50 on this, which will significantly increase the size. That is looking really, really great there, you guys. I hope you like it. And that, just see here, let's cruise back over here. That just about takes care of this left side. What we could do is actually add some spacing though. So let's go ahead and add this little P tag right here. Let's add some spacing in there. So I'm gonna say class name, we'll say PY of, we'll say PY4, see how that looks. Looks good. And then let's add some spacing to this little block right here. And that's going to be, so we have 4 rem, or 4, which is 1 rem. I think that might be okay. We could add a little bit more to that if we wanted to. See here. And see, I'm looking down at these blocks here to see if we need to add any more spacing in there. UI2. Let's do this. We'll say on this H3, let's say class name PY2, and then on this P tag again, I'm gonna say class name PY-1, which is very small, just about 1/4 rem there. So just to give a little bit of spacing and make things look a little bit nicer. Now, if we scroll this down, since we added up here our media queries, we can now scroll this down and it should take up the full width of the screen. Perfect. And as we get down below this small breakpoint, which is what we threw in right here, these should now stack. So if we go a little before, or sorry, this right here should now stack, and let's have a look. Boom, there we go. That's exactly what we want, you guys. That is looking clean, very nice. Let's take care of this form on let's take care of this form down here on the right side when we're at larger screens here. So we'll go ahead and leave it right there for now, and let's do our form. All right, we got an extra div in there. We can delete that, make sure that doesn't break anything. Perfect. Now for our right div, we probably gonna want this to, deciding if we want to do text center or not. This is fine for now, but for our right side, what are we doing here on the right side? So what we're gonna have here is we have the div, we already have that created. Now we're gonna have a div here as our top box. And inside of this top box, it looks like we're gonna have, we'll say 3 P tags here. In this top one, I'm gonna say get an additional 10% off, okay? And then let's just copy this down, but this one will say 12 hours left, 12 hours left. And then this bottom one right here will say book now and save. Sorry, not save, book now and save. So that's what we want right there, you guys. Perfect. Now let's give some styling to this here. And for this div here at the top one here as well, I'm gonna give some space here. So for this div, what we actually probably want to do is let's give this div here a class name of, see, border. Turn that caps lock back off, border. And now you're going to be able to see a little line around it there. We'll say text center, so everything comes into the middle there. And I'm going to give a little bit of padding in here as well. So let's just say, probably on this middle P tag, say PY4 for a little bit of padding. There we go, perfect. Now this bottom one here, we want to add a little box over it. So I'm going to give this a BG gray, and what are we using? 800. And then we'll have the text change colors. We can actually see now. There we go. So the text gray, we'll say 200, and then PY2 for just a little bit of padding on the top and bottom there. Oh, forgot to add our little dash there. So that's looking good right there, you guys. Exactly what we want. Doesn't matter if we basically this outer div, we added some padding. We don't need to do that. I think that actually looks a little bit better anyways. So that is looking nice. Okay, for this top, I might even add, we'll say PY. We'll say padding top too. There we go. Perfect. So let's look at that. That looks nice there. So let's do our form next, you guys. So underneath this div, we're just going to throw in another, not a div, but we can just use the form element. We don't need an action in there. And for this form, what are we going to have? So I'm going to make sure we don't have any queries. So basically, we're going to have a div. This is going to be a div here. This is going to be a div, and then another div here. So let's just go down the line here, and we'll just say div. Copy that down. Boom, boom, boom. Now in here, it looks like we want to have a label, and we're not using any of this not for this tutorial. Destination. And then this box is actually a select element. And again, we're not going to need any of these. And for the select, we need to have options, okay? So the options are our elements inside here. When we click on these are our options. So for our option, and really for this tutorial, we don't need any values because we're not hooking this up to a backend. So what I can say is Grand Antigua, and again, apologize if I'm spelling things wrong. I don't know if that's right or not. Let's drop these down a few times here, and we'll say Key West. And what else do we have in here? Key West, and we have the Maldives. And we'll just do one more here. We'll say Cozumel there. So let's have a look on our side here. So as you can see, Tailwind, it takes away a lot of our styling, but that is what we want to happen right there. Now, let's go down here for our next div. And it looks like we're going to have a check-in and a check-out date. Let me move that. Check-in and check-out. So let's do those real quick. Label. None of that there. This one's going to say check in, boom. And then input. And this type is going to be a date. And we don't need any of that there. So in fact, I'm just going to delete that and then just copy this down just to save a little bit of time. And we'll just change this to check out. That's what we want right there. So like I said, with Tailwind, we have these default styles attached. So let's go ahead and go in here and style this thing how we want it. So for our form, I'm going to target our form element first. And we want this to take up the full width of the screen, okay? The full width of the screen. Now, these here, I believe we're going to want to display these as flex here. So this div, yeah, we can just do it separately here. So flex, and then we want to say flex column, and then let's give it a margin of 2, which is just going to be 0.5 rem. So that's what we want right there. And, you know, we're going to give this to all of them here. So I'm just going to copy this. We're going to put that one in here. And then for this bottom div as well. So we can just stack them all. That's what we want right there. Now for our select and all of our inputs, we're going to want to give basically the same styling here on all of them. So let's go ahead and do that. So for this select, I'm also going to hold that down and type on this input and then this one here. And so let's give all of these a class name. And for this, we're going to want to do a border. Okay. And then we're also going to say rounded medium. And we're going to want to give a little bit of padding, P-2. That is what we want right there, you guys. Looking good. Now, yeah, that's looking good right there. Perfect. We're probably going to want to give a little bit of padding on these divs here. The MR margin, that might be okay. Let's see. Let's have a look and see. I'm going to add a little bit more on this middle one right here. Boom. There we go. So let's have a look and see how far off we are. I think that's looking pretty good right there, you guys. It looks like we need to add a button. So let's go ahead and add our button that says rates and availabilities. So we can go down here and we'll just add another div here. Another div in there for our button. Or really, we probably don't even need a div. Let's just do that. We'll say rates and availabilities. There we go. Rates and availabilities. Perfect. That's what we want right there. I'm going to give this a little bit of padding. And also, we want it to display the full width of the screen. And then we'll say, sorry, not padding, but MY4 for some margin. Have a look at that, you guys. Look at that element there, that component we just created there, you guys. That is looking clean, looking nice with our buttons here. I really, really love this gradient feature that we're using and these icons embedded into our buttons. That's looking really nice, you guys. This is what you have created so far, man. You should be proud of yourself. This is awesome. So awesome, awesome work, you guys. This is looking beautiful. Let's go ahead and move on to our next component, which is going to be right here. We're going to be using the grid system and passing through properties to these components here. So let's do that here on the next one. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down here. There we go. So done with the search here. And what I want to open up, I'm going to basically, I think I'm going to call this one selects here. So inside of this components folder, create a new file. And this one's going to be called selects for the select images that we like there. Okay, so let's go ahead and generate our functional component with RAFCE, and we want to import this one. So selects, there we go. Make sure it's imported at the top. And so let's have a look at what we want to do real quick. And it looks like, so it's the grid, and we're going to default down to one column. So we're going to have a container on here, 1240 pixels. Looks like 3 columns, and we want to have an overlay with some text in there. We're going to be passing through some properties. And whoop, that's not what we want to do. So as we scroll down, we want to look at, change this to two columns, and then once more down to 1 column. So let's have a look at that right now. We can close that. Let's go ahead and find our max width of 1240 pixels. Okay, and then we're going to say margin auto, and we want a padding of 1 rem on the left and right, then 16, which is about 3 or I believe 4 rem on the top and bottom. Okay, so now we can see we have created some space in there, and we are going to be using the grid, like I said. So let's go ahead and say grid. Remember, it defaults to 1 column, and anything above the small breakpoint, which is 640 pixels, let's say grid columns 2. Then anything above large, which I believe is 1028, we'll say grid columns 3. Okay. Now in here, we're going to have, this is our image div in here, right? So we'll say div, there we go. And the class name here is just going to be relative because we want to position things absolute within this parent div. So we want to have our image, and now would be a great time to go ahead and import our images here. So I'm just going to go ahead and, not the Maldives there, I'm going to go ahead and copy them over here, find these here. And again, you can use whatever you would like. These are the ones I'm going to be using. There we go. And so here we have our div with our image. I'm going to give that an alt tag. And instead of the quotes, of course, we want to use the curly brackets here. I'm just going to say Maldives for this one here. And in here, we want to have our overlay. This is where our overlay is going to be. As you can see, our picture is now on the screen, but we want to have a div here. And this is going to be our overlay. And within here, we'll have a p tag. This is going to say Maldives. Now, right now, it's going to show up below it there. So let's go ahead and give this class name. We want the background gray 800. We'll say 900. And with an alpha of 30, I believe is what we've been using. And then we want this to be absolute so we can see this. We'll say top 0, left 0, width full, height full. Boom, there we go. That is perfect right there. That is what we want, you guys. Now for this p tag, let's go ahead and give this a class name. Now I'm going to say left 4, bottom 4, and this is a left 1 rem and bottom 1 rem. Say text XL, text white. So this should move this right down here. We need to give this class name absolute, of course, and that'll move it right down there. Perfect. Font. And I want this to be font bold as well. So I think that is looking good right there. And let's even raise this up a little bit. Boom. So now we have a nice overlay here. Everything is looking terrific. Now, if we put this to a full screen, that's exactly where we want our image. And if we wanted to, we could just copy this down a bunch of times and keep opening this package.json. And this will work just fine. We need to add a gap in there. Let's go ahead and do that super quick. So just to this outer, this parent div here, we'll say gap 4 to give it a gap of 1 rem. But this is a lot of code and it is unnecessary. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete all this extra code that we did because we don't need all of that. And we'll go back down to 1. Now let's create another component here and we'll just pass through the properties to each component. So I'm going to create another file here and I'm just going to say selects card.jsx. You can call it whatever you'd like to call it. RAFCE, let's get our functional component in here and let's just cut this out. We're just going to cut that out completely and we're just going to replace that div with what we just cut. Now we're going to get some errors because we're not using an image in here. So let's have a look here. We don't have the image yet because we haven't imported it, but selects card is what we just called it. Boom, there we go. Now we have our image or our component being passed through, but it's throwing a fit because we don't have that image. And we're actually not going to be pulling this image here because we're passing it through with props. So let's go ahead and add some properties in here. I'm going to say BG, and then we just say the name of our images here at the top. So for this one, for example, I'll say Bora Bora, and the text, I want this to say Bora Bora. Now let's go in here and grab our properties here. So the way we take in properties, we have to intake props here at the top, and then we'll just say props dot whatever we named our value, which was BEG, and then down here we'll just open up some curly brackets and we'll say props dot text. Now we should be passing in the properties. So there we go. We've passed in our image, we've passed in our text. Now we are done with this right here. We're done with this image, this selects card component. So we can go back here and what we can do is just copy this down because we have 6 altogether. And this next one we're going to pass in is Bora Bora 2. And I'm just going to take, what are we using here? I don't know. Again, where all of these images are from, so don't hold me to it. I know they're not correct here. And then we'll say Maldives. And this one's going to say Maldives. Oh, sorry, we already said that. This one can be Antigua. And let's see, Maldives 2. And I'm just going to say this is, let's see, Cozumel. Again, these are not the same. I can say that as much as I like, and people are still going to get on to me. So, here's what it is. Maldives 3, and I'm going to say this is Jamaica. And let's do our Key West here. There we go. Camel case, yes. There we go. And now we should be seeing everything should be passed in flawlessly. Let's have a look. Boom. Oh, that's the original one. This is what we're looking at here. Let's open this up. So as you can see, boom, default to 1 column. As we get a little bit bigger, we have 2 and now 3. That's perfect. That's what we want. We look like we're having some issues here with our sizing of our images. So that is probably, we just need to define our image classes here. So let's look, I'm going to keep this open a little bit so we can see actually. So let's go into our card component here. And yeah, we just haven't added any classes for our image. So let's just go ahead and say width full, height full, and we'll say object cover, just so none of our images are distorted in any way. And that should fix everything there. So that is what we want you guys to have a look. Again, 1 column, boom, 2 columns. Then anything past the large breakpoint, we're now going to have 3 columns. So let's open this up and see what we've built so far. That is perfect, you guys. Smash the like button if you're getting some value out of this. I hope you like it. Next up, we have finished that component. Let's see what we have after this. Ooh, our custom React slider, you guys. Let's jump into that next. I'm going to scroll that back down. All right, here, and we can close these. And what we're going to do next here is start our, call this carousel.jsx. Let's go and generate our functional component for our carousel there. And what we're going to want to do is import this next here. Carousel, perfect. Now, just for some styling here, It looks like we're getting an error here. Carousel is not defined. Okay, let's just, looks like we just need to import that. Okay, sometimes you just have to reload there. So there's our carousel. And what do we want to do with our carousel? So we wanted this to give it, we want to give it a container here. So it's going to stay in our container, and then we're just going to loop through our images here. So let's start off in our carousel with our container here. So we'll say max width of 1240 pixels. There we go. We want to say MX auto, so it sits right there in the middle. We want to give it a padding of 4, 1 rem on the left and right, and then 4 rem on the top and bottom. Perfect. Now we want to display this or position it as relative, right? Because we want to position some buttons in between there. Flex, and then we're going to want to say justify center, and then also items center as well. Items, there we go. So I'm going to drop this down. Now for our images, now would be a good time to load up our images. And how we're going to do it, we're not going to import them as we did previously in this tutorial. What I want to do is a little bit different. Is I'm going to say const slider data here, okay? And I'm just going to have an array. Then I'm just going to paste this inside of an array. And basically these are just objects here. If we save it, it'll get nice and formatted. And what you can do is you can go to Unsplash. This is what I did here, Unsplash, and click this here. Now what you can do is, for example, you can click this image, right click, and just hit copy image address, and then just paste it right here in the URL property there, value. So, but I already have mine here that I'm going to be using. So let's do first what we want to do is let's just map through all of our images. The way we're going to do that is what we defined up here, slider data. So we'll say slider data.map function here. And the map function is actually going to take in an arrow function, okay? And a couple values we're going to pass in. I'm going to say item. You can say whatever you like for the first one. For the second one, I'm going to say index. And like I said, it's going to be an arrow function. And what we want to do is map through and create a div. We don't need this extra stuff at the end. We're going to create a div here, and then also we're going to have an image source. And what we can say now is item, because each array here is going to be item. Each item in the array we define as item, and then we're just going to grab the URL, and then of course we want to give it an alt tag, and that should be good there. So now we should now see all of our images down here being mapped through. That is perfect. That's what we want right there. And I'm just going to go ahead and give this a class name. I'm going to say width full, and then rounded medium. So we can get a little bit of the rounded corners. There we go. Perfect. Just like so. Now, if we just real quick, if I show you the index here, since we are using an array, this first item in the array is going to be 0. It starts 0, 1, 2. And we can see that down here if we just map it through. This is the first item in our array, the second, and then the third. I'm sure you're quite aware if you're watching a tutorial in React. So let's do this first. What we want to do is basically hide the ones. We want to only display one picture at a time, and then we'll toggle that with our useState hook. So I'm just going to say useState, and then let's throw in some state right here, const. And I'm going to say slide and set slide. And I'm going to set this default value just to 0 there. All right, so let's go ahead and toggle our class here, and I'm going to use that on this div here. I'm going to give it a class name, and basically what I want to say is get rid of that. We're going to use a ternary operator here. So if the index here, the number, is equal to the slide, then we want to, if that is true, we want to say opacity set that to 100. There it is. Else we'll set the opacity to 0. Now, boom, that hides all of the other ones there. So that's what we want right there. That is perfect. And this image here, what we can do, I'm actually just going to copy that, or rather, let me go back. What did I just do there? Let me put that back in. Sorry about that. So for this here, I'm just going to cut this out. And what we want to say, we're going to be using the JavaScript, I believe it's the and operator here. So what we're going to say, if index equal to slide, our and operator. Then I'm just gonna paste this in, boom, like so. So now we should see it right there in the middle. That is perfect. However, we probably need to add some buttons in here so we can click through to the slides. So let's go ahead and add some buttons in here. I'm gonna throw it just right underneath this div. We'll be fine here. Or I guess we can do it right above here. Let's do it above here so we're not actually gonna map through them. So for our buttons that we're gonna be using, BS arrow left square fill, boom, there we go. And we'll copy this down. This one's gonna be BS arrow right square fill. And let's give these some class names. I'm gonna give them both here at the same time. So class names, we want these to be absolute. The top, we want to say 50%. Gonna open up the brackets so we can put in our custom sizing there. And we'll say text 3XL. We'll say text white. And let's say cursor pointer. There we go. So we should now be able to, oh, can't see them. We need to import these. Let's see if it'll let us do that. Yes. And this one here as well. Boom, there we go. So now we can see we have them imported at the top. Let's scroll down. So there we have them. They're sitting on top of each other. We just need to put the left one here over to the left side. So I'll just say left 8. And that's going to be 2 rem. There it goes. And we'll do the same for this one. Only we'll throw it on the right side. So perfect. That's what we want right there. However, nothing happens when we click these because we need to create some functions to go to the next slide and also the previous slide. Let's do that right now. So I'm going to throw that in right here. I'm going to have a const prev slide. Okay. And this is going to be an arrow function. We're not going to be taking in any values. And let's copy this down. And this one over here can be next slide. Perfect. So for this here, and let's go ahead and add this in here. We're going to have some on-click functions here. So on-click here on the previous one on the left arrow, we want to run previous slide. And then on the right arrow, we want to run the next slide. So what we're going to do next is add some logic in here. And first off, before we add our logic, we want to grab the slide length. So the way we can do that, say const length equals to, looking at slider data dot length. There we go. And if we go ahead and just console.log length, we should now see here, we should now see 3 down there. Perfect. So that's what we're logging there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and comment that out. So let's give this some logic here. And what we want to say, every time we click on this button, we're going to run the previous slide function here. And every time we run this function, we want to set the slide to, we'll say index, or sorry, slide equals to length -1. True will be 0. Else we'll say slide +1. Okay. And then for the next slide, what we're going to say is set the slide. And if we'll say slide equals to 0, we'll say length -1, else slide -1. So let's go ahead and save that and see how it works. Boom, there we go. I'm not adding any transitioning or anything yet, but that is how we create our slider right there. Smash the like button, you guys. I hope you're liking this right here. So just to recap here, we have all of our images that we're grabbing up here at the top, so we have access to them. And now we're mapping through all of them. Right here, we're mapping through all of our images. And then what we're saying right here is if the index, which is the number of the array, is equal to the slide, right, that we're setting, basically we're going to trigger between an opacity of 100, which you can see the image, and 0, which is see-through. And then we're using the JavaScript and operator here to display this right here in the middle there. And what we're going here up top, we are using our on-click functions to run the previous slide and the next slide functions here. And basically we're using that to go back previous item in the array or the next item in our array. So that is how we create a full width slider here in React. And now let us go back and let's finish up the next component here, which is our footer, you guys. We are almost there. I'm going to go ahead and open this back up. We are now done with carousel. And I'm going to create our footer component, and let's generate our functional component with RAFCE. There we go. And of course we need to import this. Make sure we get that imported. There we go. All right, so for our footer, let's just have a look here. This is what we want to do. Basically, it's a full width div here with a background, and then we're gonna have a container in here. This is gonna be one div here at the top, displays flex, and then a couple unordered lists here, displays flex. And we're gonna have some media queries in here, so they actually turn into a flex column on smaller devices. So let's take care of that right now. Let's do a class name. We're gonna do width, full, and we'll do BG gray 100. There we go. And then we're also going to do a padding of 16, which is for rim on the top and bottom. So we should be able to see some gray down here since we added some padding. Perfect. So for this is our container here. We'll do max width of 1240 pixels. All right. And margin auto there. And we're also going to say flex and a flex column there. Okay. And padding of one rim on the left and right. So as we said, this is going to be one div here. And we're going to have an H1 that says beaches. And then we're going to have another div for our social icons here. So let's actually go into our navbar. We can actually just steal these here. So that way we can save a little bit of time. And let's just import these here at the top. There we go. And I'm going to go back into the navbar and actually just grab them right there. Whoa, what happened? Wrong one there. Sorry about that. So like I said, go in here. We're going to grab all of these in here. We've already imported them. And so now we can just paste them right in there. They already have our icon class name, so we should be able to see them in here. Boom, that's what we want right there. So basically for this div here, what we want to say is anything above small, we want to display as flex, right? Otherwise, we'll say text center, and we want to say justify be, oh man, I can't even type this right. Justify between and items center. Okay. And we'll go ahead and lay these down. Okay. So let's give this class name flex. Boom. There we go. And what we're going to say in here also is basically for our div here, what we're going to say is flex, and then justify between and a width full, so we can actually see our items spread out. Then anything above small, right? We want to say a max width of 280 pixels, okay? And we'll say MY for a margin of one rem on the top and bottom. So that's what we want, you guys. And if we scroll this open past, there we go. It kind of changes at our breakpoint right there, our small breakpoint, 640 pixels. So that is perfect right there. Now we're gonna have a couple unordered lists underneath that. So below this div, but still within our container here, we're gonna have a div and we're gonna have an unordered list in here. And what did I say these were? So just so I can see what we're typing here. I will say about, and let's copy these down. This one is gonna be partner chips, and we'll have careers. And this one's gonna say newsroom, and then one more for advertising. And I'll actually just do the same, go into our navbar, and let's just copy down these list items here. Just underneath that order list, we'll create another one. Boom, let's go. Don't need that. Now go ahead and save that. Let's have a look. It's perfect. That's what we want right there. However, this bottom div here, let's just, right here, we probably want to display this as flex, and we'll say justify between. There we go. And boom. And this one, we can just say text align or text right for the text align right. And that's perfect. That's what we want right there. Now, anything above the large breakpoint, I actually want these unordered lists here to be displayed as flex. So let's go ahead and say anything above large, let's show that unordered list as flex. And we'll throw that in here as well. So anything above large, we'll display as flex. Boom, there we go. So as we shrink down, I think we should be pretty close to the large breakpoint there. Yep, there we go. So as we shrink down below the large breakpoint, everything is stacked. So I think that concludes our video, guys. Let's have a look. Let's blow this thing up to full screen. Boom, there we go. So let's look at our footer. That is perfect. That is exactly what we want, you guys. Let's go up to the top here. Boom. So we have our custom header, and let's make sure our drop down menu, boom, as we go below our medium breakpoint. Boom, we have a very nice custom nav menu there that we styled with some buttons and React icons. Boom, there we go, using the React icon dependency here for our search and little person there, our account person. We have a full width, full screen video background styled with Tailwind CSS with a nice form on top. Next, we're using the grid system. We have 5 columns here with our first image spanning across 3 columns and 2 rows, and this changes down to 2 as on a mobile breakpoints here. Then down here, another grid here with a nice form at the bottom, using our React icons and our beautiful background gradients here for our buttons. And then of course, we have another grid styled layout here, passing in we're reusing a functional component, passing through a background property as well as a text property. And then we have our custom React carousel here that we coded from scratch. I hope you guys like that one. And then a footer. So thank you so much for following along in this video, you guys. I hope you liked it. Make sure you like this video if you feel like you got a little value out of it. I'd appreciate that. And consider subscribing to my channel. I'm going to be putting out some more React content just like this here in the near future. So also leave me a comment in the below if you liked it or anything else you'd like to see. Please let me know so I can have some more video ideas. Thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you on the next one.